God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Big Brad,
What's up?
I'm grateful to have you on, brother.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I love what you're doing here. This is great.
Yeah, thank
Excited
you.
to be a part of it.
Yeah, I know. We've known each other or known of each other for a long time. We grew up in the same area, and you're obviously a few years older than me, but like I seen you, and I seen the guys that you were friends with, and like those guys were like the first like warning signs to me. Like your friend group, like that age that was like above me was starting to struggle with OxyContin and like that whole epidemic.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that, but that was like I remember seeing you guys and being like, man, like what is going on there, And so let's just roll it all the way back. Did you grow up in Rockland? Like, where's your family from?
So, yeah, long story, but yeah, I grew up in Europe for till I was like 5 or 6. Then
Was your dad in the military or something?
no, so my mom's English. My
Okay.
mom's actually an English citizen,
okay.
and my dad was working as a civilian over there on the base, but he wasn't in the military at that time.
Yeah.
But so lived in Germany. They got divorced, moved out to Carmichael, finally settled in Rockland, where I moved back. I think that was like in '92. So for the most part, yeah, I grew up as a young kid, elementary school, junior high school through Rockland. Although I left for a couple years and moved back.
And
to
do you
Belgium,
remember Germany or any of that?
Yeah, well, in 6th and 7th grade, 5th and 6th grade, I lived in Belgium. So I moved back to live with my dad. So I remember a lot of that.
And
Yeah.
what was that like? What was your dad like?
You know, I wish I had more of him in my life. I think that's one of the things that I struggled with that I didn't realize I struggled with.
Right.
I begged my mom to let me go back and live with him because something in me wanted that and needed that.
Yeah.
So I lived with him for a couple years, and then once he moved back to the United States for the first time in like I think 25 years, I decided, well, if I'm coming back to the U.S., I'll just go back to California with my mom. Yeah, I don't know why. There's probably, and part of me wonders if that was one of the worst decisions I made. I mean, of course, I'm like 12 or 13 at the time, but
Yeah.
you
What made you make that decision, or what was the turning point to want to leave there to come back?
well, he had to move back anyway because his new
okay.
wife got reassigned to Virginia, right outside of D.C. And I don't really remember now why I wanted to come back to California. I think it was just because I wasn't sold on living with him if I wasn't living overseas. But part of me thinks that's probably my mom talked me into it. I think I had a lot of influence from her.
Did your dad struggle with drugs or anything?
No, I mean he drinks every day, so I would say he's an alcoholic for sure. But he's never been he's always had a great job and worked out at the gym and competed in bodybuilding, and
Oh, nice.
he's even now at 75, he's pretty jacked.
Oh, wow.
But he drinks every day, and
So was that kind of your first exposure to like bodybuilding and all that? Did you see your dad?
oh yeah, but he's
swole.
always been swole.
Beast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my mom was a PE teacher.
Okay.
So she was always athletic as well. And I remember as a kid, back when Ricky Lake,
Yeah.
Jenny Jones was
Yeah,
on
yeah.
TV, my mom would be watching that trash TV and jump roping or lifting weights and while I'm doing my homework. So I always grew up in an environment where fitness was a priority. Of course, it wasn't for me then, but it did plant a seed in me young that this is something that should be part of my day.
And did you play sports growing up, or?
Yeah, played sports, every sport like most kids. I played soccer and baseball and flag football in junior high. But then, it's a shame. So here's the thing. In high school, I got in so much trouble, not a lot of trouble, but I got in enough trouble that they told me that my punishment was I couldn't play sports,
Yeah.
right? It's kind of the opposite. What they should have done is put me into sports or pushed me more into that direction. Because instead I found an identity with the kids who aren't doing sports.
Yeah.
And that's usually not a great group unless they're playing instruments, right? Band.
Yeah, I know. It's a fine line, but in that discipline of like, what do you do with those kids? You know, it was enough for me because I didn't get to play my junior year because I was failing classes, and my parents too didn't let me play 1 year when I was younger, and like it was enough for me to like, okay, I need to like refocus here, you know. But it's so easy to like, be like, well, F you guys then, and like just turn the other way, you know, and lose that direction.
So one of the things that I really appreciate about my mom was because, like I said, she was always about working out. We always grew up eating like we never had soda in the house. We never had chips or junk food in the house. We ate chicken and rice and broccoli and tuna helper for dinner.
Yeah.
I mean, that was what we ate. And so when I couldn't play sports in school and my mom saw I was smoking weed and started to hang out with the kids who weren't playing sports. So she was really diligent about trying to get me involved in something. So I found she signed me up for a guitar lesson, and I reluctantly went, and then decided after that first lesson, oh my God, I love this.
Oh, cool.
And then I became obsessed with playing guitar. And then I also got into jiu-jitsu and Thai boxing and did some mixed martial arts stuff for quite a few years there too.
Have you noticed, looking back, like, do you feel like you've always had that obsessive personality, like an addictive personality?
100%.
Yeah.
Totally. When I look back at it now, I even think about guitar. When I would play guitar, I would lock my door and sit in my room and turn the metronome on and just play the guitar.
Yeah.
Hours and hours and hours and practice. And I would just obsess over it. And then when drugs became more of a priority, then I would obsess over that. You know, and immerse myself in that lifestyle with everything I had and go full on.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing, you know. And then those other hobbies that I had, like mixed martial arts and music, they become less dopamine stimulating than the drugs. So the drugs become, you know, getting high becomes more of a priority. And then that stuff seems to fall so far back that almost it comes to the point where it's like a different life ago.
Yeah.
But if I close my eyes and I think about it, I can remember like how much I loved that and how happy I was when I was doing those. But along what you said, yeah, I mean, everything I've done has been obsessive.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, you look at all like the great minds and people that are like at top level in sports, you know, like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, these types of people, like they're all obsessive. You know what I mean? Like they're solely focused on being the best at what they're doing. They have addictive personalities, and like that's what it takes to be great at something. But also, if that energy is misdirected or you find drugs, like you can easily just go sideways with it.
100%. And you know what I think I love about the recovery community is I just see so much potential.
Yeah.
Because these people well, we've proven that we will do anything it takes to achieve our goal.
Right.
And if we could use that same energy with something else, just imagine what can be. I think the biggest thing is getting people to believe in themselves and believe that they can actually do it. Because when you're stuck and you have no car, you got no money, you got nothing, you're freezing cold with a wife beater in negative temperature, you're still finding a way to get loaded, right?
Yeah.
So if you got that type of hustle and that type of a determination, imagine what you can do if you could just get the belief in yourself. And I think that's a lot of us who fall, at least for me, fall into this addiction and overcompensate with wanting to be known and popular or feared or respected. And it's because we don't feel that way about ourselves. And I think deep inside, we're actually scared, we're actually insecure, and we overcompensate for that by trying to, you know, do everything we can to appear that way to everyone else. But really inside, we're scared. We harbor this fear, this self-hatred, and this. So when we get clean, that's some of the work that, you know, just getting rid of the drugs doesn't deal with that stuff. And I think it's so important to have people who believe in you and tell you, like, look, you can do this. If you could do that, you can do this. If you could hustle cans all night to buy your drugs or scam and scheme to do whatever you need to do, manipulate, I mean, you can build your own business brick by brick, day by day. You just have to have that belief, you know? So I
agree.
Try not to go on too much of a tangent there, but I think that you're right on. I think a lot of us addicts have that addictive trait, that obsessive compulsive trait. And if some athletes, they were able to funnel that into something positive, we went a different route, but that doesn't mean we can't go back.
Yeah, no, I agree. And yeah, no, I think that's an important thing that I tell newcomers too, is like, if you can approach recovery with that same type of mentality and like chase your recovery with even an ounce of that, effort that you chase the bag, like you're going to have a good chance.
Yeah.
Because we pour so much energy into that. And like, towards the end, that was all my life revolved around, it was like getting and using it more, like the scheming and scamming and whatever. And so if you can put that same energy into recovery, you got a good chance there. And I think you're right. Like we lose ourselves, and like we lose our identity out there, and like, we're scared and trying to hold up these images. And I know that I would try to portray like different faces and like wear different masks in different environments. I could blend into different places. In Rockland, there's people that have money, so I like learned how to hang out with people that had money there. And then I could, just go down to North Highlands and like freaking hang out with the gangbangers down there, and like, and be believable in both environments, because I didn't know who I was.
Exactly.
Like I can act because I don't know who I am.
Yep.
And when we take the drugs away that, are helping us to mask all these feelings and insecurities, then you're left with your raw self. And then it was like, well, who am I?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it's been a process of like really learning who I am, and like,
But think about what a skill that is, that you can chameleon yourself into these different environments. I mean, because I felt the same way. It didn't matter where I was.
Yeah.
I felt comfortable that I could fit in wherever I was, at least surface area. Like I'd always have that imposter syndrome inside.
Yeah.
But I knew that I could play everyone where I was. And what a great tool to have, because if you are able to blend in all these different environments, imagine if you just wipe that slate clean, use those skills, and immerse yourself into an environment where people are successful, where they have goals and drive, and then you feel comfortable, chameleoning into that, and then it's like you fake it till you make it. Eventually, you hang around successful people, then you start to become successful, and you're able to do that because you've had the experience with jumping through these different friend groups or circles, and going from Rockland and I know my manners, my manners, and then then we could be down at the branch or in prison, and running a whole different type of attitude.
Yeah.
So then but then it does get confusing. You lose sight of who you are. So
yeah, I think you're right, and like that's kind of what I did when I got sober. Was like, okay, who do I want to be? Like, where do my morals and values actually stem from and align with? And then I looked, to the internet, to like YouTube, and like found some mentors on there that I could like follow and listen to, and then try to do what they're doing. Like try to read and they're all doing similar stuff. They all have habits and patterns of behavior and morals and principles that they stand on, and they're like dedicated to their craft, and have a daily structure, and eating habits, exercise, relationships, discipline, all these things. They're all doing the same things, and it's because they work. So I saw these things, and then you go to these recovery meetings, and you see the guys that have their stuff together, and like, okay, I want what that guy has, and we mimic those traits, and like practice those behaviors in our own life until you start to get some of that. And that's just kind of what you got to do in the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm still trying to find who I am, right?
It's a process.
I'm still on that journey, right? And just when I think I got it,
Me too.
I wonder, and I think in the beginning it's so important to get connected with people in recovery. I mean, it's all the time it's important, but in the beginning, hitting those meetings regularly, finding your place in that community is great. But I'm going to say something that might be, a little controversial. I don't know how this is how I feel, and this is my struggle. Is some people dive so addictively into the recovery life, and then that becomes their whole identity and their whole obsession, and there's no other goals outside of that. So I think that it's really, really important to have a grounded foundation in recovery, working the steps, having a sponsor, and having good people in your circle, and attending meetings. But eventually attending meetings every single day with no other aspirations in life, that's not for me, right? I need to have some other goals. And I think that's why it's great, like what you just said, is finding some other people who have other goals outside of this. Like being clean and sober is foundation. If I keep that, everything else I can build, but I still need other bricks to build those other things. So I can't just rely on my foundation to be there and then all of a sudden the house builds. Like I need to have that foundation, but at the same time, I need to be putting those bricks, brick by brick, to build the house that I want.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I'm the same way as far as like, wanting other things. And that's like, that was part of what kept me sick too, was like I wasn't living up to my own expectations, and I wasn't living up to my own expectations because I was using.
Yeah.
So it became like this vicious cycle, and I always knew I was worth more than what I was putting out there, and that gave me shame, and like guilt inside. And so, for me in sobriety, I definitely like had goals and ambitions, but I think for people in early recovery, and for me too, it was just like my first year of sobriety, I just had to be tunnel vision. Like, this is all I'm doing.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like recovery and God. I don't want to hear anything about drugs. I don't want to hear anything about violence, sex, any of that. Like I have to swing the pendulum back all the way over. You know what I mean? Because I was lost in darkness. So I needed to like be all in this way, and then I can find some balance. You know what I mean? But
totally. I mean, I don't know about you, but I even changed the music I was listening to.
Yeah.
The music I used to listen to, I would listen to, and then I would start like, fantasizing or rationalizing or like singing along, and then
100%. Puts you right in that mood.
Yeah, then I'm back in that mood. So I had to change the music I was listening to, and now I can go back to it every once in a while and be. Now that I have a good foundation, but I do think that in the beginning everything has to change, and having a focus on I think so. One of the big mistakes I made, and I think other people make this mistake too, is when you get clean, you just want to get everything. It's like, I want to get my job. I need to get a job, and you start working. It's like, okay, having a job is definitely a goal that needs to be obtained, but don't let that job become your idol, your idol or your God or your higher power, because the job is not going to keep you clean.
Or your girl,
right? And I've made that mistake so many times. The girl, the job, and it never works out. So finding work is necessary, but if you can pump the brakes, just take the advice from those around you, But in the end, I do think that I see people at meetings that are their whole life is meetings.
Yeah.
And then I don't see them really growing outside of that. So I feel like the trick is to find a balance where.
I agree. Balance is everything. And I think what you said about like having recovery as your foundation is critical. Like if you have to stay connected, you have to stay grounded in recovery and put recovery first in your life. Because if you don't have recovery as the foundation, like things get weird out there, and we resort to our old thinking and behaviors. And if like recovery is not at the forefront of your life, and like you don't have relationships with people in recovery that really care about you, you're bound to slip up, So having recovery as your foundation to build everything else off of is critical. And then having God at the forefront of that recovery, and like building your recovery foundation off of your relationship with a higher power. And then from there, you set yourself up for success. And even when things get weird, like you can always resort back to that, and like build off of that. Whereas like, if I don't have recovery, I can't do anything else. I can't hold on to jobs. I can't I always go back out, and you hear it all the time. Guys that relapse, I always ask them like, what happened? And it's always stop coming to meetings, stop talking to my sponsor, gave up my service position, and then all of a sudden life showed up, something happened, and then you're back out there.
Yeah, totally. Or just letting yourself reconnect with old friends, and just opening that door. And you may not walk through that door right away.
Yeah.
But if you keep that door open, eventually you're going to have a day where either you walk through that door to meet them, or you open that door for them to come be around you, and then all bets are off,
Yeah, and it's like that's like a subconscious, like self-destructive habit, that I have had to become aware of, and like pay attention to like things that, you know, my subconscious is doing. Like for me, carrying a gun for a long time was like, well, why am I doing this? You know, just because it's a habit. And then it was like, now I came to the point where it was like, I think subconsciously I wanted to get caught.
Yeah.
It's like I have this subconscious, like self-destructive habits that are still back there that I've built up this lifestyle that I love and like am happy with. But I've done that before and I crash it all down because I have self-destructive patterns of behavior.
Do you think, so my question with that, like in what you just said, that's a good point. Do you think that's self-destructive, or do you think that somewhere in your mind you're carrying that gun or doing things hoping you'll get caught because that'll save you from your addiction? Because what I mean is, I think a lot of times I'd get sloppy out there with things. And I think subconsciously I just wanted to get caught because I wanted the police to save me from myself.
Yeah.
And the only time I ever felt healthy and felt clean and was clean and felt good was when I was locked up.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I would just kind of almost subconsciously want to get caught so that I could be forced to be clean because I didn't know how to do it on my own. I don't know. Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, I have, but I'm talking about in sobriety.
Oh, wow.
Like
Okay.
I built up a life like of happiness and joy, and like, but I still would like hang on to these self-destructive habits that I'm not even paying attention to.
Yeah.
You know, and like even fantasize about, you know, like hunting down pedophiles and like, you know,
Totally, yeah,
But I think part of that is because
I don't know.
it's
I
the
wouldn't say
easy
that's-
way out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's an easy way out for me. Like I can go murder pedophiles and go to prison. And then, you know, like being locked up is a whole lifestyle in itself. And once you're comfortable there, you're comfortable there, you know? Whereas like this lifestyle is not easy. Like living a sober lifestyle that is like, you know, we have lots of pressures and like things going on, but it's so much more rewarding. You know what I mean?
Well, maybe I don't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would like to think that I often fantasize about killing pedophiles, and I thought that was normal, but maybe that's not normal. I don't know. Maybe normal people don't sit around and think about that. But
Yeah.
that didn't sound too weird to me when you said that.
Well, guys like us, maybe not, but
Yeah. I always look around like, are you one of them?
I know.
Are you
right?
one of them?
Let me check your background.
Yeah,
bro.
yeah,
Let me see your
exactly. That car
paperwork,
looks
bro.
suspicious.
Yeah. So let's go back to where we were talking about your childhood. Was there any like looking back, were there any like red flag warnings in your family that, or any like trauma in your childhood that set you up? You think
not the
an
traditional, no traditional trauma like molestation or severe beatings or anything like that. Like my mom didn't know how to discipline us very well, so she put her hands on us quite a bit. But it wasn't like I wasn't going to school with black eyes and broken bones, you know.
Yeah.
I think that I got something was wrong because I got kicked out of school, suspended from school every year from kindergarten. I mean, even before that, in daycare, I was always hitting someone or talking crap and you know using bad language and getting in trouble forever. And why that is, I don't know. Now I look back and I just think that because my mom and dad, when they lived together, was very hostile before they separated. And I think I just I grew up with as a young kid with so much yelling and screaming and like hatred that I was just had anxiety all the time. And
You think it just came
brought
out
that.
as bad behavior?
I just brought that anxiety with me. And then when my parents split, you know, I didn't recognize these feelings as a kid because I couldn't really identify these feelings. I wouldn't be able to tell you like why I was feeling the way I was. I would get asked that all the time. I don't know. It's only now that I'm older that I can look back, and now that I have kids, I can see the things that affected me that I didn't think affected me, like not having a father around.
Yeah.
Seeking attention from other people because I didn't feel validated. And so I had to make myself feel validated. You know,
Did you have any stepfathers or like male role models in your life, or was it just you and your mom?
no. So the only
Do you have siblings?
I have a brother.
Okay.
I have a brother. He's 2 years younger.
Younger. Okay.
Yeah. He and I never really got along too much. We were so close in age, but we always had that sibling rivalry as we were younger. And then I went off in a different path than him, so we kind of split up. Now we get along great, but yeah, I've got a brother who's 2 years younger, but that's it. And my mom never had another man come into the house until I was a teenager. And that was the worst time for that because
Yeah, yeah.
I just started smoking weed and hanging out. And she's with this guy, and he wasn't bad. He was nice. He took care of us. She's still with him. He's a great husband. I have no complaints. But I could probably count since I was 13 to now, he's probably spoken maybe 1,500 words to me total.
Oh, wow.
So we've never had a deep conversation. We've never had like any type of relatability or any type of one-on-one hangout time, nothing like that. So I never had felt like any connection with him, any role model. All I felt as a kid, as a teenager, is who's this guy in the house? Now I have more rules than I had before, and I have less time with my mom. And yeah, I mean, he was, as an adult, I have no complaints about him. I understand where he's coming from walking into a situation with someone else's kids and probably didn't really know how to handle it. And that may have just been him doing the best he could. But yeah, I never had any connection with any type of male figure other than the guys in the streets that were, you know.
So when did you start running around in the streets?
Pretty much at 13.
13. Yeah.
Yeah, I was already selling weed, drinking, smoking, selling weed. Got kicked out of school for selling weed when I was 8th grade. Then it just continued to advance from there.
And how do you think that started? Like, were you idolizing things you saw, or was it just friends you were hanging out with?
Yeah,
or?
I think a mixture of all of that. I idolized certain things, but I kind of knew better than to do some of these things until you get to the age where kids are experimenting or hanging out with different kids that you find are cool. Then I think we were told, like, at least in the beginning, you're told about marijuana and it's like this horrible drug, but then you smoke it and you're like, this wasn't a big deal. Like, what else are they lying to me about? And then I felt like the teachers and the adults, they kind of lost credibility. So at 13, I'm thinking, well, this wasn't that bad. They're just probably lying about everything. So then it was floodgates open on everything. So it all started with weed, but it's weird because I started smoking weed, and from the first day I smoked weed every single day for 20 years, never stopped.
Oh, wow.
And I never thought I had a problem.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I know. It's wild.
So where did it go from there as far as the progression with drugs? Did you start using hard stuff pretty quick?
No, so actually from 13 to 17, I only smoked weed. That was it. And I ate some mushrooms, and so I guess I smoked some coke on some weed. But it was pretty much just weed and like maybe some hallucinogens here and there. And then finally, I think it was when I was 17 that we found OxyContin, and so weird. It's like, what the hell is this,
Yeah.
And we had no idea what that little pill was going to ravage on our community.
Yes, let's talk about that for a little bit, because we both come from that environment and that time frame, and like we obviously lost a bunch of people through that whole wave, and like the damage that it caused in our small town and worldwide, or at least nationwide, was incredible. Like what was the progression of it that you saw firsthand?
The progression was basically, here's this little pill. We're going to feel good, get loaded. A lot of us were kind of already on probation. So they were tripping on us, smoking weed. So it was like another thing we could kind of do that would get out of our system quick. And coke started to become popular back then. So we were doing some coke and then wanting to come down from the coke. And oxys were great for the come down. In fact, that's how a lot of us started. A lot of the people in my group started using OxyContin because it was a great way to come down off the coke. But then after a couple weeks of that, it's like, oh, you get tired of the coke, but all of a sudden you can't stop the oxys. We had no idea. When I first started doing oxy, I had no idea what withdrawal was, that there was a withdrawal, and what that would feel like. I think me and my friend group all experienced that kind of together.
Yeah.
And then it was reality, like, holy crap, this is not...
Then it just
This is some serious stuff,
gets a hold of you, So what did that feel like for you, like when you first realized you were addicted?
Well, when I first realized addicted, I realized when I went through the first withdrawal, I went, whoa, this is like, I was not expecting that. That hit me hard. I went to the emergency room. I tried to do everything I could. So actually very quickly after detox kicking a couple times, then I'm always the type of guy who finds the connect and gets the good price. So then I'm buying them for cheap and selling them and making money off selling oxys. But it only takes detoxing a few times before I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I want to get clean off this.
Yeah.
And so it didn't take me but like a year before I went to my first rehab attempt.
And what age were you then?
I was 19. I might have actually been 18 still. It was 2005. So actually, yeah, I think I was 19 when I first went into rehab.
How'd that experience go for you?
Well, I thought, being the naive 19-year-old, that 30 days was all I needed.
Yeah.
I just needed to kick the oxys. I needed to get unphysically addicted to them. And once I got clear of the detox, then I was good. You couldn't tell me otherwise.
Yeah.
And after that, actually, to be honest with you, for a long time, after I kicked oxys for that first time, it took me years and years before I ever touched an opiate again.
Oh, wow.
But when I got out of that rehab, that's when I first, well, that's like the second time I used crystal, and the first time I really got high. And then I thought, okay, this is where it's at.
And were you IV using Oxy?
No. I back then we snorted them. Later, people started smoking them. I guess we didn't know anything about that, but we used to snort them. That was the only way that I knew to do them. Then eventually, people started shooting them, but I didn't get into using needles until later in my 20s.
So you got out of that rehab. Were you introduced to like 12-step stuff, or?
Of course, yeah, I was introduced to it, but I would look at the 12 steps and decide. Oh, I'd sit there in the meeting and say, okay, I just worked the first 3 just staring at it, Okay, I'm there. But even though I'd say that to myself, I really didn't believe in a higher power yet. I really was still justifying why I wasn't powerless yet. And that, my life was unmanageable, but I could start to manage it if I get out of here and get a job and get the right girl and, all of that stuff. So, I had a taste of that. But I was, at 18, 19, no one can tell you what to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I look back at you couldn't tell me anything. I'd be in the rehabs and I'd look at the guys who just did 10 years in prison, and I'd be more excited about doing that than getting clean. I want that experience, not this guy talking about, oh, my life's great and I'm clean. I'm like, being clean, that sounds boring. Going to prison for 10 years, that sounds more fun.
Yeah,
that's how sick I was.
And I couldn't learn from anybody else either. It was like, I saw you guys struggling with it, and it's just like, it won't happen to me. Like, for whatever reason, it's just like, I just have never been able to learn from other people's mistakes. And so I had to feel those for myself. What was your experience like with God as a kid? Did you grow up in a Christian household?
This is a great question. I love this question. I'm glad you asked this question. So, no, my whole family, no belief in God, no mention of God. I had neighbors, kids that went to church, and I'd go with them because, there would be donuts afterwards, or because I wanted to hang out with them afterwards, and I would just go, but never really believed in God, never thought it made any sense as a kid. And then as I got older, I actually started to hate the whole concept of God and Jesus. And
why do you think that was?
Because I just thought it was I would look at people who would believe this stuff, and I would think, man, you seem like such a smart person. Yeah. Like, how can you be so
naive,
dumb to believe this stuff, right? And I would argue with them, and I was chronically arguing with people who believed in God and giving them the points why I thought it was wrong, why I didn't believe in it, why it was trash. Every time I would try to go to rehab or attempt to get clean, I didn't want anything to do with this God thing because I just thought it was hocus pocus. I couldn't.
What was your reasoning? Like, what were your reasons?
Because, so the reasons I didn't then is now I look back and I think what I was doing was I was letting these little stories throughout the Bible. I was trying to take everything too literally and find reasons why it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, to be honest, to believe in a God who created all of this was it's challenging to wrap my mind around. It still is challenging to wrap your mind around, but now I look at it as it's the simplest explanation for all of this. But why I didn't see that before is a long story. I don't know why I had so much disdain for it. I think to sum it up, the reason I hated Christianity and I hated the concept of God was because people made it look bad.
Yeah.
It was Christians that make Christianity look bad. It's religious people that make religion look bad. And I was looking at people to force or reinforce my belief in God, but you can't do that because people are flawed and people are terrible, and people will use religion or anything to control people and into power, but that doesn't mean that it's not true.
Yeah.
Just because the Crusades, and you have all these religious wars and people killing over God, those are people killing over God. When you look at the actual scriptures and you start to read what Jesus says, he doesn't say kill in my name. No. He doesn't say attack the heretics with death. He says come with compassion.
Turn the other cheek.
Love thy neighbor, right?
Yeah.
People ruined my concept of that, and I had to step back, and believing in God and Jesus Christ has been a process. Jesus Christ is who I look for as my savior, but it came from a small seed of maybe there's something out there that created this big bang, that it just didn't happen from nothing. And then praying to the universe. And then as soon as I started praying to the universe and I started to get revealed more and more and more, and then finally I realized that, there was a journey of a higher power to finally landing on Jesus and saying, this is of course the truth.
Yeah. No, I share a similar experience. I didn't grow up in a Christian household either. And my dad was spiritual, and like he was into like Native American stuff and still is. So like he talked about God here and there. And so I always had like an interest, like what is, I don't know what that is, but like I heard it at least, and like I had friends that were, Catholic and Mormon, whatever. And I kind of same thing, went with them a few times here and there. And I thought it was weird, like, especially the Catholic, like all these ceremonies and stuff going on, I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
But I had a hard time, believing the stories of the Bible too. And I still do, honestly. Like some of these stories, I'm like, that doesn't, even the story of Jesus and like literally dying for our sins, literally washes away all our sins. It's hard to digest.
Yeah, totally.
And, the more that I've, studied it and like really tried to open my heart to the truth of it, eventually I just came to terms, and like I really felt like God spoke to me and said, you don't have to trust the Bible, like you just have to trust me.
Totally.
And
100%.
so that's where I found peace in it, and like found understanding and faith in Jesus and not in people, because people are flawed, and like yes, it's divinely inspired and like, but it's still written by people. And so for me, that was hard to overcome, and it still is, to this day. But I have absolute faith in the teachings of Jesus and that he is my Lord and Savior. And that came through, just like you said, like a seeking, I didn't know Jesus in the beginning. No. I was just like praying to God, like Lord of the universe, creator, whatever that is. And then like sought him out, and like looked at different religions, from Buddhism to Taoism and like Hindu, and like tried to look at all these different things. And I got a lot out of all of that. There's a lot of similarities in all of it.
Totally.
You know what I mean? And, but for me, the same thing, like the more I looked, the more I found Jesus. And like, I felt like all roads just lead to him, and the more that I've, fallen in love with Jesus and like really like cultivated that relationship, the better my life has gotten.
Look, here's the thing. You can't go wrong.
Yeah.
With Jesus, you just can't go wrong. If you follow what he says and you take his recommendations, it's just like in the 12 steps. You follow the recommendations of your sponsor. You take suggestions. If you follow suggestions, the program works.
Yeah.
If you follow what Jesus says, everything works out for you. You make the right choice. I mean, everything, your life becomes blessed. Everything works out for you. And then you start to realize, wow, all these things that I thought were a hindrance, that, Christianity wants to limit me from doing this, this, and this. I don't want anything to do with something that's going to tell me I can't do this, this, and this. When you start following Jesus, you start to realize why you don't want to do this, this, and this. You realize why sleeping around with tons of girls sounds cool, but then you actually start to see why it's not suggested, why it is a sin, why we're missing the mark when we do that, because it does cause a ripple effect of trauma in their life, and you're not pair bonding as much now. There's a whole ripple effect of things that happen beyond that, and that's just one example. There's so many things that I wanted to do because I wanted to do them, and I didn't think there was a big deal. But then as I start to follow Jesus and listen to pray and read the Bible, then I start to realize, wow, it makes sense why these things are suggested for us, right? My life will turn out better had I followed these suggestions. And the whole thing with the Bible stories is I would like to encourage anyone who's struggling with that to don't get hung up on these stories. We don't know how to translate them perfectly. We don't know if they're supposed to be, word for word exact, like taken literally. I can't say that someone threw their staff at the ground and it turned into a snake. These could be metaphors, and a lot of the Bible is metaphoric and parables. You see, some of these Christians that would tell me that the earth is only 2,000 years old, and like it's clearly not. Science can show that it's not. Then I'm thinking, well, why do these two things have to be in conflict? But they don't. Christianity and science don't have to be in conflict. We just need to not listen to those who, follow Jesus yourself, and not get hung up on some of these minute details that that really don't matter. They're not the point. These are easy explanations for things people back then, but what really matters is the Gospels of Jesus. When you read the Gospels and you follow that and you see how your life turns out, then it's true.
And it was like the risk versus reward of it too. Like for me, like looking at it, okay, what's the risk if Christians are right or not? It's like if Jesus is who he says he is and did the things he says he did, and if you believe in him, you have eternal life and like get to spend, eternity with him in paradise and all this. Whereas like if you don't believe in him, who knows what's going to happen?
True. Now I struggle with that though, because that sounds good on paper, but then you still have to convince yourself to believe in something that you may not believe in. So taking that hurdle from I don't believe in God, but I'm going to say I do just because I want to maybe have these benefits, doesn't actually get your heart in the game, right?
No, I agree.
Your heart has to be in the game because you take small steps to get there, and just have the openness that Jesus says, if you have the faith of a mustard seed, that's all it takes. And it's so true. If you're just willing to say, okay, maybe there was a creator of all this. Once you say that and you just open yourself to that, it will be revealed to you. You
open that door and he'll come in, and when you seek him out, he'll show up. You know what I mean? And
it's so I'm going to, some of the things that at least I'm going to speak for myself. Sex before marriage, right? Not having sex before marriage, all these, let's just use that as an example. As a kid and as a normal person in society growing up without God, I think, well, what's the big deal about that? I don't want to get married to someone who I haven't slept with yet. I don't know if it's going to be good. But then I start to realize, well, no, if the bond that you would have with that person, if it was you and them, is going to be a lot stronger. That's proven. Science has proven that pair bonding decreases with the more sexual partners you have, the ability to pair bond with people. So, bam, God had it right there. Then you see how important it is to have a solid family unit with a mother and a father in the home. So those who have sex before marriage and have kids out of wedlock, their kids suffer the consequences of it. I mean, even Obama said, list the statistics of how likely you are to go to prison and be homeless and suicide, all these things without having a two-parent household. So all these things that we think sound silly, like, oh, I don't want some God telling me I can't have sex before marriage. Who's that hurting? But then when you really look at it, you're like, wow, well, science even shows that these things are negative, and the best way to happiness would be the way that God lays us out for it. It doesn't mean if we do it any other way that I think that we're bad. We're not bad. We're people. We're flawed. But he lays out this plan, these set up a system, and says, look, if you follow this system, your life will be blessed. And we choose not to follow that system, and then we deal with the heartaches because of that, right?
I know for me, like when I'm living in my will and like out there like seeking the pleasures of the flesh and like just trying to have my own way and not, living a life of meaning or, living in the principles of God or of Jesus. Like my life sucked, like it was hard. Things didn't work out for me.
Yep.
I felt like I was fighting upstream all the time. Like it was a struggle, and like, there's the saying, if you do hard things, your life will be easy. You do easy things, your life will be hard.
Yeah.
And like living a life of discipline and that's part of, living a Christian life is having discipline and walking, with morals and values and like trying to walk in the principles that Jesus laid out for us.
And it's hard.
And it's hard.
It's real hard.
But through doing that, the blessings are just like poured out upon us, right? Like, and it's not always great, but we have the foundation to fall back on when things get ugly. But most of my life is just incredibly easy and blessed because I'm living this lifestyle and I've chosen to follow, those principles and like chosen to walk that narrow path.
Yep,
It's made all the difference.
Totally. My whole life has been about instant gratification and going with what feels good at the time. But there's always a debt that you pay for that.
Yeah.
And when you follow God, which is really hard, like I struggle with it all the time. Like I'm saying this out loud, but every day is a struggle. I my eyes veer, my brain runs, and I think about a lot of things that if I said out loud, people would probably be a little concerned about. But through seeking God and being open to letting Him be in your life, it's crazy that you want to go the other way. You don't want the instant gratifications. You start to realize the blessings, like you just said, the blessings that come on your life from not taking that immediate gratification, but delaying that, doing what God says, and then boom, it moves into something way more beautiful that actually builds something substantial for you and the people in your family.
Yeah, and I think, one of the great things about recovery and like in that 10th step is like we take an inventory of how we're acting, right? Take a daily inventory, and when we're wrong, we promptly admit it. And like just being aware of how I'm acting in society.
Yeah.
And like acting, the way that I'm thinking and the way that I'm looking at women and like the way that I'm talking to myself and to other people and the way that I'm dealing with people in general, like being aware of it and then changing it. Like, don't just continue these behaviors, but like actually try to change it. And it's progress, you know what I mean? It's not perfection.
Totally.
It's just like we're always trying to sharpen the iron and like trying to move closer to God.
And how do you sharpen iron? With other iron. And that's why it's so important to have solid brothers, sisters, people in your circle where you can say some of these things you're thinking out loud.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, I understand. I think those things too. Not a good idea, brother. We need some people to check us sometimes.
100%.
And sometimes normal people who don't come from that background, it's like, you don't feel as comfortable opening up with some of the things that are going on in my head.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand. But I can say it to someone else in recovery and check myself,
Yeah, you can walk into a room of Narcotics Anonymous and everybody understands.
Yeah, exactly.
We're all the same, dude.
Yeah, I love it.
We all struggle with that.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the fact that what gives credence to me that also helped me believe in a solid foundation of God is it's like the foundation of AA and NA and overcoming any obstacles in your life is a belief in a higher power.
Yeah.
So why is that? It makes me wonder, like, what's the scientific rationale for that? It's there's got to be a reason that believing in a higher power and prayer and meditation is the key concept for recovering from any addiction. So why is that? It has to be because it's real.
Yeah.
And if it's real, that means there is a higher power. And if it's innate in us to be seeking that, like you said earlier, you said you went through Buddhism and Taoism and all this stuff because you were seeking something. I think we all seek something. We all seek something bigger than ourselves. But we found ways to use drugs or women or gambling or sex or porn or
false idols,
violence or whatever it is that we seek out for those feelings, but the feelings are channeled from above, and all we have to do is tap into that channel. And the great thing about NA and AA, and I think a lot of addicts are blessed because without that addiction, they would have never sought out
Yeah.
God, and without seeking out God, they would never have had their lives blessed the way they are. So I don't regret. I try not to say I don't have regrets, because there's some things I do think I would like to do differently.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what I've done has brought me here, and
Yeah.
where I am now is with a relationship with God that I never thought I would have. And if you told me this 5 years ago, I would have laughed in your face.
Yeah.
And now here I am. I'm here with you. We're talking about God. And I'm getting excited about it. My palms are getting sweaty. I'm getting stoked, Bring it on.
Yeah, yeah. So didn't grow up in a Christian household. Didn't quite get it on the first attempt with recovery. So you got out and you picked up a bag of meth and just hit the streets running.
Yep. And I thought that meth was the best thing since sliced bread. I mean, this is how sick I was, right? I really believed that because I wasn't using opiates that had like a physical addiction to them, that I was clean. I thought that I was doing good because I was using meth, and I'm thinking, who doesn't want to have more energy? Like, who doesn't want to get more stuff done?
Why doesn't everybody do this?
Yeah, I was thinking, why doesn't everyone do this? This is wild. Like, I can't believe this is illegal. Like, why are we not all on this? And I really, I say that and I'm laughing now, but I really believed that then. I really thought that, well, there's no physical addiction, so it can't be that bad. I can quit anytime I want. Sadly, that's not how it works, right? Because it really wasn't about the physical withdrawal from opiates in the first place that like we like to tell ourselves. It was the fact that we felt high and we did it again and we did it again. And why did we do it every day? Not because we were physically addicted in the beginning, because we liked to get high and we were addicts. And then that came later. So the meth just became the staple in my life. And that was
And where'd that lead you?
no, that led me to jail, more rehab, getting clean for a little while off meth, but I had some more run-ins with some opiates here and there. Always drank and smoked weed in those in-between times that I was clean. I would think that I'm clean. I would tell people I'm clean, but I would be smoking weed every day or drinking on the weekends. Drinking was never a big thing for me, but, I'd go out with friends and I'd get hammered and, but smoking weed was always something I did intermittently, and I always thought I was clean, but it would always end up leading back to meth, because eventually I'd get too stoned, I'd be too tired, I'd want something to pick me up, or I'd get too drunk and I'd want to be out partying with the girls all night, and so I'd get a little bump, boom, and then it's right back into it, because I didn't have a foundation of understanding and admitting to myself that I was an addict, and once I put in, I can't stop. Until I came to that realization with myself, I would always justify using sometimes. And then that sometimes I'd get high, wouldn't get high for a few months, and be like, look, see, I got control. And then I get high again, and then wouldn't get high for a month. See, I got this. And then those times in between get shorter and shorter and shorter, and before you know it, you're getting loaded every day again and right back where you started. So
and I think we rationalize like, oh, it's just weed, or I'm just drinking, like everybody's doing it, whatever. And it's like, for me, I had to come to terms that I can't successfully use anything because it always goes back to that place. Like, when anything is okay, then anything is okay under a certain circumstance.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because you're already using something. So like the jump from one thing to the next is not that far.
Totally.
And it's just a slippery slope.
Well said.
Especially with alcohol.
Yeah.
Like it changes your decision making. Like your rationalizing just goes out the window. And so like you're having a few beers or shots and then somebody pulls out a bag of dope, like your impulse control is not there. And your rational thinking is not there.
Totally.
And like, so you're just that close,
It's very deceptive, because you can drink socially and normally for quite a while until that one day where you don't. And you have a little bit too much, and then someone hits you up on Facebook, hey, what are you doing? And there's someone you used to get high with, and then it goes from there, and you go pick up a little bag, and then you're off and running again. So the question you asked me earlier was, where did it lead from there? Basically, my whole life was getting high, trying to get clean, doing good for a little bit, doing good-ish, getting high again, intermittently just smoking weed and drinking. That I think I was able to make it like 3 or 4 years with just doing that. No, not even that long. So yeah, a couple years of just smoking, and then it would be like meth and pills, and then I'd keep it together, and I'd use pills to sleep every night. So I was using crank every day, and then Xanax every night, and I was still making it to work. And then I would crumble and fall, and then I'd get a girl who let me move in with her, and I'd get my stuff back together, and then that relationship would go sour because I'm getting high, and I was just using her anyway, and on to the next one. And my whole life was just a cycle of wasted talent and wasted skill that I knew I had.
Yeah.
And I'd get these tastes of success because I was really good at a few things. There's a few things I was really good at, and sales is one of them. And I would just be such a great salesperson, and I knew I had the opportunity to do better, but I didn't know how to stay clean, and I didn't know how to trust in a higher power.
Yeah.
Sorry, I kind of took that on a tangent there, but
No, I think that's important. And just to go back to like, when we're using anything like all the time like that, like I'm trying to get to a point where I don't need anything. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to have to rely on anything. And so when we're like smoking weed all day and like rationalizing it's just weed, like you're still like covering up emotions.
totally.
You're still changing the way that you're feeling.
Yeah.
You're trying to get out of your own mind, like
Yeah.
whether you're trying to go to bed or you're trying to, I'm gonna smoke before I, eat or whatever, dude. Like you're smoking when you feel good. You're smoking when you feel bad.
And I'm not a guy who's against marijuana. I'm actually very pro
Yeah.
THC. I think it should have been legalized a long time ago.
Sure.
But for me, when I start getting high, it doesn't matter if it's just weed. I get high every day. I can't stop. I can't
I use
function.
it all the time.
I wake up, I'm smoking. Even though I tell myself I'm just going to smoke before bed, it never works out. I smoke when I wake up out of bed.
Yes.
And then I'm just smoking all day long. And you get to the point where it's so normal, you feel fine. But now that I've been sober and clean and haven't smoked weed,
Yeah.
even just weed, then I realized, wow, I was really living in a fog I had no idea I was living in. Like,
Yep. And we're just like masking our feelings, and I had to get to the point where like I just want to feel okay just being me.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to have to run. I don't want to have to change the way that I feel anymore. I want to be able to be comfortable in my own skin without having to change the way that I feel. And like I can't deal with myself if I'm always changing the way that I feel, And so I had to come to terms with that. And I could never use it successfully anyways. Like it always just led me back to places I didn't want to be. So through your meth use, is that when you started to really get into the crime and stuff, or where did that?
well, I was into sales for quite a long time, selling heroin, selling meth. I mean, I have a lot of good stories about this, and we could go on forever about, how much dope I sold, what I was able to afford, how I bought a house, all this stuff, right? But really, what matters to me is how you can go from this life that you get so entrenched with, like it becomes like I use the term, it weaves into the fabric of who you are.
Yeah.
Like getting high, selling drugs, doing crime, you get connected with people, which some of those friendships were real. Like I have some friends that are hard not to talk to anymore that are in that life that I love them, and I hope they get clean. There's quite a few people, and it's so hard. You become somebody and you become good at something and you belong, and that life is intertwined with who you are, that it's so hard to break that. It's so hard to move away from that, but there is a way to move away from that, and it does get better. And I know people say that, and it's hard to understand that. But if you are an addict out there who's willing to do crime and go do 6 months or a year in jail, and you're doing that over and over again, or you're out there, you're not working, you're just living couch to couch streets for 6 months or a year, why don't you just try it?
Yeah.
Take that 6 months that you were going to do in jail and go try getting clean and see if your life gets better.
Yeah.
Pray every day, even if you don't believe it. And I promise you, things are going to change.
Yeah, like buy in, you know what I mean? Like actually give it everything you got, like really, I mean, drink the Kool-Aid, like give it a shot, like give God an opportunity, like really seek him out, really ask him to come into your life and like really buy into these programs too, and like build relationships in these rooms and work the steps to the best of your ability. Actually get honest with yourself about the things that you're doing and have done, and like, why was I doing these things? Because that was a big thing for me. It was like figuring out what went wrong here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how did I go from that guy to this guy? Because the man that I became through crime and through the streets it's not who I am. You know what I mean? Yeah, I built an identity, and like you said, like it became who I was through habit and like through building relationships. But at the end of the day, it's not who I am. Because as a sober-minded individual, I don't make those decisions. You know what I mean? That's not who I want to be.
Yeah.
I don't lie, cheat, and manipulate. I'm not out committing armed robberies, poisoning my community with drugs. Like that's not the morals and values that I hold. And that's not who I want to be or strive to be. And so, you know, for the guys that are out there, like, you know, look at us, look at guys like us that have lived that lifestyle to the fullest and, you know, have played that game all the way through. And, you know, we all know, like, the streets are a lie. The streets don't love you.
No.
You know, there's nothing really out there at the end of the day. The best thing that comes out of those years in the streets are relationships.
Yeah.
You know, like, those relationships are real. Like, you bond through trauma, and you bond through, you know, those lifestyles and all that. Like that's a real thing.
I would say resilience too. You become really resilient out there. And if you can use that for good and believe that you can do it, because you can, just because you've been out there for 10, 15 years. Yeah, it gets harder as you get older.
Yeah,
for sure. But there's a place for you, and you're resilient, and you know you're resilient. You need to believe that in your heart, because I know that you are, not just you, but any addict out there who's been on the streets 15 years. You've got some strong courage. You got some strong will. If you can direct that into something else, I mean, the world's yours. And if nothing else, you've been out there and you've done time, you've done crime, you've done all lying, stealing, cheating, all that stuff. You have a story that you can share that will impact someone else. Yeah. And when you see your story impact someone else, that gives you fulfillment, because you're making a positive change in someone's life. 100%. And there's nothing better to stay clean or to have purpose in your life than to help other people.
That's what like instantly gave me like meaning, and like gave all of my struggle meaning. Like all that pain doesn't have to be in vain. Like we can use those experiences to help other people. And like all the negative like turmoil and chaos that we caused in our lives, and for the people, you know, that care about us, like all the harm that the devil used against us, like God will flip the script and use all that pain for purpose. Yep. And you can use all your experiences to turn back and reach out and grab somebody else's hand and pull them out of the streets.
I like that. I hope anyone listening doesn't steal that tagline, "Pain for Purpose."
Yeah, no,
we're gonna trademark that on something.
Yeah, we should make
Pain
some
for
shirts.
Purpose. Yeah, some shirts. Yeah, I like that.
It's the truth, though, you know, like. And then because I spent so long, like, felt like I was wasting my life and potential, you know, like just wasting these years, fucking smoking heroin off foil. Yeah. You know, just sitting in a room and like, you know, no meaning to what I was doing, you know, just pleasure seeking. And so all that doesn't have to be in vain, you know, like you can use your story to help other people. And if you can do that and help one person, it's all freaking worth it.
Yeah, I know.
You know, it's the truth. And that's why it's so important for us to do things like this, and to, you know, to show up to these programs and to share our story and to help other guys, you know.
No,
and it helps us too.
100%, because when I'm feeling like I don't want to go to a meetings, or I don't want to go somewhere else, it's not always about me, just me showing up. And when people are asked, who in here has a year or more recovery, and I can raise my hand and I can be an example that it does work. Sometimes that's all I need to be there for. I was called to show up because someone saw my hand up and it gave them hope. Right. Or that I look around and I see someone brand new straight off the streets, and it reminds me, oh crap, I know how that feels. Thank you, Lord, for being with me today and taking
Yeah.
me this far. And it brings my gratitude back, you know, and the reality that one bad decision, I'm one bad choice away from that.
Yeah. It's important to go to meetings and hear those newcomers.
Yeah.
It's like our lives get good out here.
Totally.
You know, like we build a good life and like we forget,
Yeah.
dude. You forget what that felt like.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I like doing H&I meetings, because I get to go back into these places, like into rehabs and jails and stuff, and like get to sit down with these guys, and I've been there. You know what I mean? I've sat in those cells, I've sat in these rehabs. I know what that feels like, and I know what they're feeling like, and it works both ways. I need to see and remember what they feel like, and they need to see somebody that's made it out, that's been in the same chairs. You know, so it's a mutual benefit.
Absolutely.
And
One addict helping another,
yeah,
right?
that's how we do
Is
it.
without parallel.
Yep, that's how we do it. So you ran all through your 20s and then into your 30s. And what was the turning point where you were like, what was your rock bottom? Like where were you at before that? And
That's
like, what happened that made you change your mind
That's a
and
good
want
question.
something different?
What was people have asked me this before, and what's your rock bottom? I hit rock bottom so many times. I mean,
Yeah.
what you would have thought my bottom would have been a long time ago wasn't my bottom, right? And
You
so
can always dig deeper.
yeah, and it's not always deeper. It's more like sometimes a lateral movement. Like I'm like it's just as deep, but it's like
Yeah.
it's
Somewhere else.
It's somewhere else and something else, and things have had time to weigh on me. And I think that having my kid, my first son, taken away from me, and that put me into a really quick downward spiral
Yeah.
when I lost custody and guardianship of him.
Yeah.
And then I felt like there was no hope. I felt hopeless, that there was no chance. I spiraled out of control. Then I had another kid, and I was going to get it together, but I didn't really know how to, and I don't think that I really wanted to fully. I wasn't ready to get clean. I still thought that there was hope for me to do. There was still hope to cope and do dope,
Yeah.
you know, but there wasn't. So then I lost that kid, and I got CPS took him away, and so now I've lost two kids, and now I'm like totally feeling like a failure, like a total loser, and going downward into a deeper spiral. Still not ready to get clean, wanting to get clean, and I wanted to get clean. I'd keep trying, but I would get kicked out of rehab for doing something dumb. I'd be in rehab and I'd end up getting high anyway, and I'd justify it. And I got picked up on a warrant one time during a CPS visit. The cops came in and I was clean, but they picked me up on a warrant, and so I got kicked out of rehab and had to go back to jail. And then I felt more hopeless from that. And I'm like, oh, see, people are going to keep setting me up. So it took me a while out there. Then when I went to prison, I got another perspective on choices and chances because my cellie was a lifer. I was on the yard with a lot of lifers that were never getting out. And it gave me and a lot of people who've been down 20 years, 15, 20 years, 25 years.
Yeah.
And I'm out working out with them on the yard. We're working in the kitchen together. And I'm thinking, man, I have the opportunity to be out of here soon.
Yeah.
And I don't ever have to come back. I don't have to be here this long. It's all about my own choices. So, and then I started to see people getting high in there, and the amount of dope and drugs that's in there is just so overwhelming that people are getting high in there more often than they were on the streets. And I saw the drama and the stabbings and all that stuff that's associated with it. And I thought, man, this is just, addiction is sick. Like this brought brought a whole new perspective on how sick it was. So I wanted to be clean. I really wanted it. And I tried my best when I got out. But I didn't get connected. I didn't connect with other people in recovery. And the second someone came into my parolee house with dope, I indulged, and then it was off from there, right? I managed it for another year or so. Then finally I lost my job, and then it was full-fledged back into the streets. I just never was willing to accept help, and I still thought I could do it on my own. So I would say that I wanted to get clean after I went to prison, and that's when I decided, I really want to do something different. Like, I'm done with this, but I didn't quite know how, and I wasn't willing to accept what was suggested of me yet. And then after a few more years of that and missing my kids and realizing, look, they're going to grow up, and then there's like, I'm going to feel real hopeless. So I can feel like crap now, or I can feel like a total asshole worse later. I need to make a decision.
Yeah.
And at that point, I started to like actually cry at night, missing my kids, knowing there was something better, trying to get into rehab. And then finally having that desire of like, look, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't got this figured out. I need help. So I think that's kind of the transition is around 31, starting to reach my 30s, I started to think differently about where do I want my life to go.
Yeah.
In my 30s, it's like, okay, am I going to continue this life of if I just going to keep doing this in and out of prison thing and, you know, jail, prison, and streets for the rest of my life? Or am I going to get it together? Because there comes a point where it becomes harder. What am I going to do? 40, 45, and then try to get clean? And then now I have that much longer of a gap in between employment and skills and the willingness to, you know, learn an old dog new tricks. Like, then my kids just hate me because they're grown up and I'm too old. And so then I had to make a decision, like, what do I really want with my life?
Yeah.
And I want to be clean, but I don't know how to do it. And I don't know if I can do it. And that's where the first spark of hope came.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important, you know, and I relate to that. And a lot of guys never get it, you know. Like, I would say most guys keep going in and out of prison, and like, you know, you see guys coming in and out of the rooms and just like back and forth. But I felt the same way, like when I lost custody of my daughter. You know, I was shackled to a table in a courtroom. They shuffled me in and told me I lost custody, and I was like, just broken, dude.
Totally.
You know, just like really got the fuckets. You know, like I don't even care anymore. Like that was the only thing I even cared about.
Yeah.
You know, so now you take that away, and then like my hatred for women after that, and like through the whole experience, you know, just really hurt, dude. A lot of pain from that
Anything
whole,
you can do to not take responsibility for yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Just
Yeah.
blame everyone else.
Yeah.
It's easier that way.
Yeah.
Instead of to look at yourself and be like, look, I'm the one in control here. I'm the one making these decisions.
I
And
know. I didn't even realize that until I worked that 4-step.
totally. Yeah.
I worked that 4-step and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm actually the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was the one.
Yeah. I'm not just
You
the
know.
unluckiest guy in the world who everywhere I go, it's just everyone's just dooms on me. You know,
Yeah.
maybe I'm the toxic
Yeah.
person.
I'm the common denominator
Yeah,
in all
exactly.
these situations. Yeah. So the seed was planted. You're like, I want something different here, but you just weren't quite ready to surrender. Is that you had to do a
Yeah,
little
I mean,
more?
this was a process that happened over and over, and a
Yeah.
lot of times throughout my life, I was like, I want to be clean, but I don't want to stop smoking weed.
Yeah.
I want to be clean, but
Yeah.
I really don't. I just wish I want to be clean. That was kind of how it went, and then finally, you know, after being out there and just coming to the realization, like, look, if I don't get clean, I'm going to spend the rest of my life locked up because the things I'm doing continue to get progressively worse and worse. I continue to get more and more angry and more rageful. And I just, it's been a process to want to get clean. Even when I came in this time, this last time that I went in, I was determined that I really wanted it. And I think that what really, because I really wanted it, I was willing to pray to a God I didn't believe in. And that was the turning point when I started to actually pray, even though I didn't believe. I just went through the motions. And then it's something that you can't explain.
Yeah.
Someone just has to do it to feel it.
Yeah.
But then these
But it starts with that
connections-
willingness,
Yeah,
though.
exactly. And then the connections start to make on like, oh wow, well that makes sense. Well, maybe creation makes more sense than everything else. And these feeling and then he starts to open doors for you where you meet the right person and you have the right conversation that connects better dots. And you have the open. I mean, if your mind's open, I mean, it's cheesy. You know, a mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open. I mean, it's a cheesy cliche that you see on like kindergarten walls, right? Posters. But it's so true. Like if you're open and you're not going to be, and you try not to be combative and you just really shut your mouth and open your two ears and listen to what someone else has to say
Yeah.
and try not to fight it, just listen
Yeah.
and walk away. Those things, you'll start to think about that more and be open to things that maybe you weren't open to before.
Yeah. I mean, that's how this program works. That's the acronym. How? Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Like, it starts, with those three things, like being honest about where you're at and like the things that you've done, and then being open-minded, to this program and to a higher power, and being willing to seek him out, and like being willing to be open-minded, and being willing to be honest with other people, because it was hard for me to like be honest with it was hard for me to be honest with myself.
That's what it was hard for me to do, is be honest with myself. And I think one of the things that actually catapulted me into this was, and I talked about this in the meeting, like, I went to this program running away from something, running away from a crime that I was worried was going to catch up to me. And it was started with a 911 prayer, God, please get me out of this, and I'll do whatever it takes. I'll seek you. I'll do. So as I'm sitting in rehab, wondering if this act of violence is coming back on me, I'm trying to appease God that I don't believe in. And I'm like, okay, my counselor gives me a book. Look, God, I'm doing the book. Please don't let me. But then through doing some of this work and reading some of the Bible and then showing up to the church groups and trying to I was doing it for the wrong reasons at first, right? I was doing it because I thought that it would somehow, it was like a karma thing. Like, I'm going to do this and hopefully this won't catch up to me. But what happened is, through seeking that, even if it was for the wrong reasons at first, it opened my eyes and opened my heart to realize, wow, this might be real. And then my life everything started to unfold. And some of it's hard to put into words, how much can be revealed if you're open to being, open to being blessed with this knowledge of this power you can tap into at any time. Ever since I've been clean, which has been 4.5 years now, I haven't had a single bad day. Some days aren't as good as others. Yeah. But it's always good compared to what it could be.
I know. Yeah.
Like, I look back at what it could be. It's always great. And guess what? If it's not good and I don't have it figured out, I don't have to. He'll figure it out, right? I got to put one foot in front of the other. I got to do the work, but I don't really need to know where that road ends. I just need to know that I just take another step, and I take another step, and he'll reveal the end of that road, and it'll all work out the way it's supposed to. And once you have that, it gives you so much peace.
Yeah, 100%. Just having that faith.
Yeah.
Like controlling what you can control, and giving the rest to God.
Like the serenity prayer, I think it's something that gets diluted because we say it so often, and it becomes like this thing we just say out loud. But when you really break it down and think about what that few sentences really mean, it's powerful.
It's super powerful.
I mean, if you can really...
That's why we say it every day.
Yeah, I know. And it becomes such a cliche. And if you just say it out loud and you just follow and everyone chants it together, it just becomes this thing that just drones behind you. It kind of becomes a dead word or dead phrase. But when you actually break it down, it's like, God, grant me the serenity or the peace to realize that I'm not in control of everything.
Yeah.
And why am I going to stress about those things I can't control?
Yeah.
That whatever I can't control, it's supposed to happen this way. And one door closes, another opens. I say, thank God for unanswered prayers. Can you imagine if everything that you wanted before happened? You wouldn't have the things you had today. I can't imagine. If I got the girl that I wish I wanted a few years ago, who knows what kind of disastrous mess I'd be in, right?
Yeah.
If I got this job that I wanted in the past, and I was perfect example, I got this job, I wanted it, they hired me on, they did a background check, I'm burnt, right? Then I get another opportunity for another job, and ends up being way better. Yeah. And so while I'm mad, cursing, God, why are you shutting these doors on me? I'm trying to do everything right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if I was just patient enough, I realized he opened another one for me that was way better, and I was able to touch and bless more lives through this other door than I would have here. So, these things that we think we want, Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard I would say it's not hard, but it takes time to get to that point of like just having complete faith in God and like in the process. And you have to experience things like that. You have to live in that faith and then have the retrospect to be like, wow, that worked out exactly how it was supposed to, and through having that faith, like, it saves you so much like stress and anxiety, because you're not constantly worried about the future. You know what I mean? We control what we can control, our actions and our reactions to things that are happening, and then give the expectations and the outcomes to God. And whether that works in our favor or not, like, it's working in God's favor regardless. And like, I'm all in for his favor.
Totally.
Anyways.
I've got a great story actually. That this is probably this is a perfect example. I knew a girl actually. Car broke down. Of course, that's miserable. That sucks. Your car's broken down.
Yeah.
So all upset. So we have to call a tow truck and whatever. End up getting an Uber, getting this Uber ride. So Uber comes, picks us up. Well, the Uber driver ends up having a job opportunity for this girl that was great. And so here we go from this God, cursing God for this car breaking down. But then in the end, it turned out that this other door was open through meeting and talking to the Uber driver that ended up being a huge blessing and a life altering experience. So you never know when you think things are bad, you don't realize what that bad thing could actually be turned for good.
Yeah. Relationships too,
Yeah.
like you think, oh, my girl's leaving me. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to me. But like, sometimes those relationships have to end.
Yeah.
So you can like focus on yourself and, work on some character development.
Totally.
And become a better person to attract the woman of your dreams.
That you really want instead of being a codependent jerk. Yeah.
And, going back to that character development too, like you were touching on, we have to work on ourselves to become the best version of ourselves. So when we're given these opportunities, we can capitalize on them.
Yeah.
It's like when I was out there struggling in my addiction, like I was given opportunities, but I didn't have the character to live up to the person that could take advantage of those blessings. So today I try to develop my character and like sharpen that blade. So when not only am I creating my own opportunities, but when these opportunities show up in my life, these blessings, I'm able to capitalize on them, and I think that's a huge part of recovery and then life in general.
Totally. I would spin that a little bit or build off of that I think these opportunities would show up in the past, but I didn't trust myself enough to take advantage of them because I was so used to just losing everything anyway.
Yeah.
And I was so used to failing that these opportunities would come up and it would sound good, but somewhere in the back of my mind, I just wouldn't take full advantage because I knew I was going to lose it anyway. And when you have that mindset, it's a loser's mindset. I mean, it's a pity me, I'm a victim, poor me, loser mindset. And I know that's harsh, but when you can come into it and say, no, I can do this. I'm going to do the next right thing. The next step I take is going to be the right step and the right step and the right step. Then all of a sudden you're not losing all these things again. And now you're making these little tiny goals and achieving them. And then all of a sudden you're building confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
Wow, I can set a goal. I can achieve it. Let me set another goal that's a little higher. And then you set that goal. And now you've built this habit of setting goals, believing that you can do it, trusting the process, and then achieving it. And then that confidence is something that is so important. It's so important to get out there and do, like you were saying earlier, you're talking about these 70-mile runs and these swims. It sounds like, man, that sounds terrible. It does sound terrible. I'm not gonna but the thing
was
is,
terrible.
Yeah. The thing is, you set a goal and then you achieve it. And the end of that, the self-confidence and fulfillment you get from like, look, I set that, and no matter how bad that sucked and how many times I wanted to quit, I didn't.
Yeah.
And I was able to do that. And the way that translates and ripples into the other things in your life is just tremendous.
100%. It becomes a lifestyle, of having goals and setting goals and like just having the goals and having direction and like having the discipline to, have that character development and work towards these things. And like the person that I become through having fitness goals and like working towards them and having the discipline and the structure in my life and building those positive habits, it ripples through all areas of my life, business and relationships and just how I'm, carrying myself in general. And another part of that too, of like the confidence and the stacking wins is when we overcome hardship in our life in recovery, without using.
Oh, 100%.
Like when you go through a tough time, when that girl leaves you, when you lose that job, when your dog dies, whatever it is, and you don't use and you overcome those struggles, and like you use the tools that we learn in these programs, and like you rely on God, you have that faith, you reach out to somebody else, you talk about it, you work some steps over it, whatever you got to do, but you overcome those things in recovery, like you gain that confidence. I can
argue,
get through anything.
I would argue that what you just said was even more powerful than the analogy or the kind of
It's
painting,
just another part of it. Yeah.
Because, you know, one of the things that I'd always fall off the deep end with was when I'd break up with a girl and a relationship would end. And then like, I was never really clean anyway, but I would just go downhill a lot faster when those relationships would end. And I would start using a lot more, my doses of everything I'd be using would go up. Well, then in recovery, then I get out of a relationship and I don't get high. And then I just realize, wow, I can do that.
Yeah.
I've never been able to do that before. I got out of a relationship and I didn't get loaded over it. Holy crap.
Yeah, I know.
I can do this. Like things will it sucks. And you sit through those bad emotions and you don't get loaded over it. It gives you the confidence it gives you to like, look, wow, the things that they say in A are so real. Your feelings, they'll pass.
Yeah.
They'll go away.
Yeah.
You getting high, that's going to lead, that's not going to stop until you hit the wall.
Yeah.
If you can sit through some negative feelings and you can sit through them and sit them out and realize they're just feelings, they're not going to kill you.
Yeah.
The freedom that, I mean, it sucks in the time, but afterwards, the freedom you get from that is like, wow, I really can go through some hard shit and not get high over it.
Yeah. And you see guys go through the worst, you know, their children dying and like they don't use over it.
I know.
Like
that's rough.
We never have to use again, you know? And I spent so many years like running from my feelings, you know, like didn't want to feel, you know, like couldn't handle my emotions. And like I had to come to terms like it's okay to feel.
Yeah.
Like it's okay to have feelings. And like be
believe it
able
or
to
not, that's what most people do.
I know. But it's
most
like
of the population actually has these things. I know I wasn't until I was like 33 till I actually had an emotion.
I know,
I was
right?
like, oh, wow, what
or
is
like
this?
able to deal with it. Yeah, I know. So like it's okay to feel, you know, and like I needed to learn how to process these emotions without adding drugs and alcohol, because all that does is make things worse, you know, like the drugs and alcohol, it started as fun, you know, and then it became a coping mechanism.
Totally.
You know, where like I would use to change the way that I felt. I would use to, you know, get outside of my head. But then the drugs became a problem in themselves. So now the drugs are an issue. Where like every time I'm using drugs and I'm using drugs all the time, like the drugs themselves are a problem. Like when I put drugs and alcohol into my body, it's a real issue for me. Like my whole life goes sideways. I'm not able to keep anything together. So I need to realize that adding drugs and alcohol to any situation is just like pouring gas on the fire. It's not going to help anything.
No, it just adds another problem.
Yeah, it just adds another problem. And it's like, you know, that instant gratification or that instant like release of tension that, you know, a shot of whiskey can give me is not even close to worth the repercussions that come there from it.
No, and I think that's one of the benefits of once you can actually sit out and get a good amount of time. Like, everyone's different. For me, it was like probably a year where you get this good amount of time. You actually have the ability to stop, and play the tape all the way through. Where and with a clear mind, like where is this really going to take me? Because at this point, to me, there's no reason in which getting high or getting drunk sounds like it would be a viable solution. But in the beginning of getting high, I would find a way to internally, deep in my mind, rationalize a good reason so that I could go back out there and blame it on something else and not me. But once you get some time playing the tape all the way through, okay, let me get high. If I get high over this, if I get drunk over this, if I do whatever over this feeling, what's that going to do? Cool, I'm going to feel good for a minute, and then I'm going to feel some deep shame for letting myself down for doing what I said I wasn't going to do. And then that problem, that feeling, it's still there.
It's still there. And it's probably worse.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, I think it comes down to that willingness, too, of like, when I was out there, like, rationalizing my using, to change the way that I felt over these problems. Like it was really because I wasn't willing to do whatever it took to stay sober.
Totally.
Like I remember having the conscious decision, like I should probably call somebody, I should probably go to a meeting. Instead, I'm pulling into the freaking liquor store.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I wasn't actually willing to do the things necessary to get and stay sober. And like that's an honesty thing that you have to come to terms with. And it's like, are you really willing to do the things necessary? And if you are, then you're willing to take certain steps to ensure that you remain clean and sober, like picking up the phone, like going to a
Totally.
meeting.
And I think so, like in sales, any type of sales, we realize that people don't buy what they need.
Yeah.
They buy what they want, right? They buy based on something that's emotional to them.
Yeah.
Even if they need something, like let's say they're diabetic, they're overweight, their doctor says you're going to die if you don't get in shape, they still will hesitate doing it because even though they need it, they don't really want it. Right. So the goal is to find out how we can get them to want it. And I think the same thing with recovery is we know we need it, but we don't want it because it doesn't sound more fun than what we're doing. And I think that's why it's just so important to find people you can connect with that are clean and sober and make sure it's fun. Because if being sober is not fun and being loaded is more fun, you're going to always go back to being loaded, even if you know that logically being clean is better. Emotionally the emotions are always going to take over, and we're going to go with what feels better than what we know we want. So we got to find a way to make recovery fun and enjoyable. And then to do what you said and find ways to stick it out, even when it's not, to stack those wins to where you're like, wow, okay, I'm really winning. I'm seeing a good streak here and I don't want to lose that.
And even wanting it is not enough. Like I wanted to be sober for a few years there, like really wanted it, and like really wanted, to be doing the right things and like get my daughter, back in my life the way I wanted it to be, and like be able to hold jobs and like live up to my own expectations. And I couldn't do it. Like I was powerless, and I had to be stripped of everything, and like really get that gift of desperation. Like I need to be sober or I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison or I'm going to die. Like that was it, dude. Like my health had declined to the point where I was at a turning point, and my life of crime had gone, to a point where I was at the crossroads.
Yeah, and then you look so sick, you just look suspicious.
Yeah, exactly. And I was sick more than anything in my spirit.
Yeah,
totally. I was broken, dude. I was absolutely broken. And God knew that. And God put me into that position and sat my ass down for a little while, exactly where I needed to be. And he never left me. You know what I mean? Through all the shit that I went through in the streets, through all the chaos and pain and turmoil that I went through, God was there the whole time. And he guided me and blessed me through all these situations that I should have died or done a bunch of time over anyways. And he knew exactly what I needed at the right time and waited for me to be open-minded enough and stripped down, humble enough to reach out to him. And he never left. And he was right there when I called,
Totally. And, they say a lot of guys find God in prison and in these desperate times. And you'll have a part of the population that looks at that as a testament that God's just in our head because, now you believe in him because you're in this crappy situation and you're just looking for a way out. But I don't look at it that at all. I think that, like you just said, the blessing of desperation or the gift of desperation, when you're finally in a point where you realize, I don't have it figured out and I need help, then you're open to seeking that help. And so, it makes sense that people find God in tough places because, I mean, look at the disciples that Jesus walked around with. They were people who were struggling, who realized that, they didn't have it figured out and they needed something else. So sometimes it takes being in a bad place to realize that I need something beyond myself, and just to be open to that, like we said earlier. And now that open-mindedness starts to ripple into like true belief and understanding some of these things that maybe you didn't believe before.
Yeah. And I don't think it has to get to that point of desperation,
Totally does
you
not.
know,
Yeah.
but if you're the real alcoholic and like you're at that point of powerlessness, like it's the only solution. Like you have to get a higher power in your life. You're not going to be able to overcome your addiction without
Which
God.
right there is proof to me that we are not the end all be all.
Right.
Right? If you have to have a higher power, if every foundational NA, AA, any recovery group has any, all of them have basis on finding a higher power. So if that is one of the key things that's necessary to overcome obstacles that you're struggling with, that's a huge proof right there that maybe, just maybe,
Yeah.
there's something to that.
Yeah, and like I remember looking at all these people that had spirituality and like, you know, religious lives and people that I looked up to and respected, you know, and like what did they have that I didn't? They had this connection with God. Like they had this lifestyle built off the foundation of God. And who am I? Like I'm just some dirtbag drug addict thief. Like who am I to say they're wrong?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't have my shit together. They have what I want and they have this relationship with God.
Maybe that's the missing piece.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Just maybe.
And then we come in these rooms and like all the guys that have been through the things that we've been through, they have God.
Yeah.
They've recovered. They found meaning in their life. So it was like, okay, let me get out of my own way here and like open my mind up to this possibility.
Totally.
And so when you first got sober and you started working the steps, like what were some of the turning points and like some of like where did the light bulbs come on in your early recovery?
Really writing down. I remember writing down in the NA workbook. I worked in the NA workbook, and I remember writing down all the things, and which was great when I was fresh and clean because I could relate all these things to like how I would just been feeling in my addiction. Now, if I did it, I think a lot of the answers would be different. I struggle with different things now.
Yeah.
My powerlessness shows up in different ways. But one of the things that really, when you write this stuff down, it's one thing to like hear someone say it and then identify with it. But when you actually write it down and you read it out loud, like to yourself, it becomes so real. And you have to come to terms with the reality of like, when you get asked this question, like, how did powerlessness show up in your life with your addiction? And you start writing all that out, it's like, wow,
Yeah.
it's hard to deny that I really do have a problem. I just put it on paper in my own words. And some of that just really starts to reinforce like, okay, you know, this is what it is. But as you keep working, you realize that it doesn't have to continue to be that way. But I'd say the turning point for me was, it's really simple. And it's a answer that doesn't need much explanation, but the turning point was God, was being open to a higher power.
Yeah.
And praying, and even though I didn't believe it, being open to the fact that maybe there was something to it, because why is everyone else getting clean, believing in this? And it's the one thing that I've rejected my whole life, and I've never been able to stay clean. So why don't I try it? And I think that's the biggest turning point. I would just the openness to a higher power. And I would say that gratitude and higher power are the two like most important, biggest, exciting topics for me to talk about, because gratitude and higher power are the two things that are just like foundational in not just staying clean, but loving every day that I'm clean.
Yeah. How has gratitude changed your perspective?
Oh, I don't do it every day anymore, but in the beginning, I used to like actually write down the things I was grateful for.
Yeah.
Now I don't do that as I probably should. But I do reflect very often daily in like meditation when I take 5 or 10 minutes and I think about all the things that are going so great in my life. It reminds me like that everything I'm doing is good.
Yeah.
And what I've trained myself to do was that every time a bad thought came up, something negative, I would turn it into something positive. I think I've kind of done that a few times here, right? Finding the silver lining in everything. And anytime I would have a negative thought of like, oh man, I got a long day today. Then I turn it into, I just flip it right around. It's like, man, I have a long day out here in the gym with tons of people that are happy to be here. And I get to go eat my own food that I cook at home, that I don't have to be served on a plastic tray. I get to wear my own clothes. I can, so I think of all the things that are great. I have my kids I can go see and talk to. And I turn these things that, you want to get down and bitch and complain, because I think we all get into that habit. But if you can get in the habit of turning your bitching into praising, it's easy to stay grateful.
Yeah.
Because there's a guy, I don't know if you ever heard of Wes Watson.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, I love him. Because he says some stuff that's just so real. It's like when people are bitching and complaining about this is hard or this, it's like, yeah, compared to what?
Yeah.
Like this sucks compared to what? Compared to your, because when you've been in the depths of darkness and you've been in this gutter and you've been in the worst places, man, it doesn't matter how bad it is out here. It's fucking good, you know? Sorry, excuse me. I don't know if I'm allowed to,
No, I cuss all the time.
Okay.
I can't agree more. Like, it's all about perspective.
Yeah.
It's like, and when you've been in those dark places, only then can you appreciate the light. Like I had to feel those depths of pain to understand the peace and serenity that I have today, and the gratitude for me too has just been so crucial. And like the majority of my prayers are just around gratitude, just like so thankful for everything that I have.
Yeah, reinforcing that too.
And the more that we like have thoughts of gratitude, for me, I've noticed like the more things I get to be grateful for, like the more I focus on the positivity, the more I see positivity. Like the more gratitude I have, the more things I'm able to have gratitude for, and it's all about that perspective. And for me, going like the God thing was the biggest shift also. And I found it in that third step and like making that decision to turn my will and my life over to a higher power. And for me, like that was it, like I'm cutting the tie here. Like I'm cutting off the route to my old life. Like this is it.
Yeah.
I'm making this decision, and I'm only doing this once. You know what I mean? Like I'm not redoing this. I'm making this decision. I'm repenting. I'm changing directions, and I'm going to try to live my life, in God's will. Whatever that happens to be, I'm going to try and be obedient to it and just like follow that direction.
Totally.
And try to do that to the best of my ability. And like, we've talked about, we're human, we make mistakes, but trying to align my will with God's will and try to be aware, like, is this in God's will?
Yeah, totally. Because sometimes you don't know if it's in his will, but I know what's not in his will.
Right.
And it's usually the first thing I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. If
Is
it's
this God's will or not?
self-seeking,
Well, if it sounds like it's something that I would want to do, it's probably not something he wants me to do.
Exactly. And when I made that decision and like have tried to be obedient to what I feel his will is in my life has gotten better. Like,
Totally.
From
And it
then
just
on.
takes the burden off of you.
Yeah.
Like that. And again, I want to reiterate, that's not to say that you can sit around and not do anything and expect that God's just going to do all
No.
the stuff in your life, right? But if you can do your best and do the next right thing and pray for guidance, just get out of your own way and realize that you don't have to control everything.
Yeah.
That if it doesn't work out, maybe it just wasn't supposed to work out.
Yep. And for me, like trying to walk in that will, like, and for me, God's will looks like service and like being a good person, like living righteously, being a good member of society, trying to be helpful wherever I can. And then, doing, like having my own goals, but making sure these goals are aligned with God's will and like moving in that flow of life. And the more that I've, tried to walk in that lifestyle, like things have just worked out,
Totally.
And when they're not working out, it's because it's me.
Yeah.
Like I'm the one trying to control something. And it becomes blatantly obvious.
Oh yeah, I mean, every time we've tried to control something, we ran it into the ground.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to talk a little bit about fitness. You're a personal trainer.
Yes, sir.
How did that come about? Like, was that something you found just in recovery, or I know, like you said, your mom and dad were into fitness, so you kind of had that instilled into you.
Yeah. So actually, so this actually goes back to my first time going. I got 9 months when I was like 19 in county jail, and had to do some rehab after that. And one of the things that I've started to do in there was work out, right? This is one of the things I started to do. I started to notice a difference, and I liked it. And it was actually something that gave me something when I got out as a hobby to continue with. So as I'm looking for things to where I'm going to take my life, I liked working out regularly, and I liked playing guitar. I played music. So I thought, oh, I'm going to go to college for music. So I went to Sierra College, signed up for some classes, realized really quick, oh, this is not for me. I love music, but this is making me not like it. So it was great because I knew that, okay, that's definitely not what I want to do. So what should I do? And then I saw this list of jobs come out that said, the top biggest booming industries, and personal training was one of them. And I was like, well, why don't I do that? I love working out. I would love to help people. Working out has kept me clean, because that was always something I fell back on. And so I decided to do that. And so I actually started personal training when I was 21. And for my whole adult life, that's pretty much what I've always done. When I'd get off track, even when I was off track for a while, I would still be training, working in the gym, managing a gym. And then finally, things would get bad and I'd fall off the rails and I'd be off for a while. Then I'd get cleanish again, or, come back out of some treatment or some jail stint and then get back into training. So really, I started training 16 years ago when I was 21. I'm about to be 38 now. So a while.
Yeah.
So it's something I've always done. But since I've been clean and sober here, it's been, it's been really good. Straight time. No interruptions,
So what do you get out of fitness? What's it do for you?
It's a great question, right? It's always great to see your body change. It's probably partially a replacement addiction, right? I get addicted to setting goals and achieving them. That's great. I get addicted to seeing my body change. I also get body dysmorphia, right? There's probably a lot of other mental stuff going on that's probably not the healthiest with that. But the one thing that it does more than anything that I'm so passionate about with fitness is it gets me out of myself. So for that time I'm working out, I'm not thinking about anything but letting my mind be free and detaching. So it's a great, kind of meditative thing for me. And those endorphins is a great way to replenish the dopamine and the endorphins that maybe I'm missing from substances. And then when I don't get that, then it's like, oh, I need that again. So getting that pump, setting goals, achieving new records, it's just a great way to it's like a snapshot of what I want my entire life to look like, right? I want my entire life to look like me achieving goals outside of the gym. And inside, it's just, I would say it's more of a mental escape. It's probably the best mental therapy of anything, is just being in the zone and moving and getting in tune with your thoughts and putting everything out to the side,
Yeah.
So I would say that mental health is probably the number one benefit from exercise and training. And that's why I'm super passionate about trying to get people involved with working out, especially in recovery, because when you're so devoid and you're in this deficit of good hormones and dopamine and all these good feeling chemicals, you're in such a deficit. We need to bring those back. And a great way to do that is building those endorphins and the dopamine back, but also building your confidence back and making those small wins along the way that can translate into your business life or your family life.
100%. I couldn't agree more. It's probably the number one cornerstone of my mental health and recovery is I need it. I need it. I need it for mental clarity. I need it for processing emotions. I need it for processing ideas.
Totally great.
You know what I mean?
Point.
Especially for me, the endurance stuff I've gotten into, the running has been so meditative and being able to process what's going on in my life, and just kind of deal with things that are going on in my brain, and then, like you said, the goal setting, the pursuit of these goals and all the positive benefits that come from the discipline of exercise, that, from nutrition to, paying attention to the way, your sleep cycle, water intake, and becoming obsessive with it too, and like becoming addicted to it. And like, it's okay. Like some of the greatest people in the world have addictive personalities. Like we were
Totally,
saying, it's
yeah.
like, what are you funneling that into?
Yeah.
So if you can put it into positive things, then it'll show.
As,
You know what I
yeah, and as
mean?
long as it's not causing detriment in your life, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I think that's where I would draw the line. Is
Yeah. Yeah.
when
No,
your,
for
when
sure.
your family life or your other parts of your life are starting to become affected because
Mm-hmm.
of it, that would probably be a negative. But the thing is, because I've done this so long, and I started doing it because it was one of those jobs I could get with felonies. Like a lot of gyms weren't doing background checks, and so many other jobs weren't taking me. But then after so long, it was kind of like being in the streets. I got good at it. I got really good at helping people. I got good at creating systems. I got good at creating sales systems and training systems that would work if people apply them. And so then the confidence in what I have to offer in my service is just grows, and I know what I can do for someone if they're willing to just show up and try. And so that's another passion of mine because it's something that's become my calling,
Yeah.
and it also gets me out of myself. So I get to help someone else.
Yeah.
And even though it may not be helping them in recovery here, I know that I'm helping them with so much of their mental health, whether it be from whatever their trauma or background is. It may not be from drugs. It could just be from wanting to get in shape. That's what they say, but there's always a deeper layer to that.
Yeah.
And I know that whatever that deeper layer is, even if I haven't reached the point of understanding what that is yet, I know that I'm helping someone else.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like you get to it's a service position to like be able to help people to, work towards their goals in fitness. And it feels good to look good. People get that confidence. And the positive things that we get out of exercise ripple through everything in our life.
Totally.
And I've noticed that like the discipline and focus on my physical goals ripples into my business life. And, that discipline becomes habit, right? And like it becomes habitual in all of my practices, everything that I'm doing. And that perseverance and the goal setting and achieving and the chasing. Like it's a lifestyle, and that lifestyle was built on the foundation of exercise. And then all the physical benefits you get from it too. Obviously, the mental health and clarity, the physical health. And it's just, I can't push it on newcomers enough. I'm just like,
Totally.
it needs to be part of your life.
Yeah.
Get your ass off the couch.
And not everyone, I understand. I love weight training. That's my thing. I understand, though, that that's not for everyone.
Yeah.
But you got to find some form of moving your body
Yes.
that is enjoyable for you, that feels good for you. If that's yoga, great. If that's playing tennis, great. If that's playing basketball, awesome. Hiking, but you got to find something that you enjoy doing and pursue it regularly. If it's not weight training, that's fine. I get that's not for everyone. But riding a bike, running, there's so many other activities out there that we can be doing to stimulate these endorphins and watch ourselves get better. That's great. And, I listened to this Huberman podcast the other day, and he was talking about a part of the brain that grows when you do stuff you don't want to do. So things that are hard that you don't like doing, but you do them anyway, there's a part of your brain that grows, and that part of your brain that grows is hugely effective on your mood, your confidence, and plays into longevity. So I think that I love weight training, and there's other things that I don't like, but doing those things I don't like. And I think that's why the cold plunge is really another benefit of it. It's you push yourself through suffering that you don't like, and there's a part of your brain that actually grows from that and gives you more neuroplasticity. So I think there's a lot of benefits with doing exercise because you like it, but then doing some stuff you don't like just to test, like you did earlier with the running and the bike, the swimming. I'm thinking, man, that sounds terrible. But then I'm thinking, man, but how great would that feel to do something that's so terrible?
Yeah. No,
The
it's
reward
worth it.
afterwards is just
worth it. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And like, I think having goals too, like don't just be willy nilly, like getting lost in the same routines or just like be aimlessly exercising. I think it's important to have focus
totally.
and to have goals. What kind of guidance would you give a newcomer that's like just getting into their fitness journey?
Great question. The biggest thing, the most important thing, I would say above anything is just be consistent. Let's just say if you joined a gym, I don't care if you go in there and you do, I would suggest not going in there and doing a hard workout at all.
Yeah.
Make it easy. Go in there and just do a set of this and a little set of that and have a plan, right? You want to have some sort of plan, but enter that gym or your exercise program doing something really easy, but show up the next day and do a little bit more, and show up the next day and do a little bit more, even if it's one more rep or you stay for 5 extra minutes. Just the consistency of showing up is going to take you far greater than jumping in, wrecking yourself, being sore, than having this connection with fitness that's associated with misery and pain and suffering. And you're like, oh, I don't want to go through that again. Just show up. Once you walk through the doors and you start doing something, everything else will happen without your permission. But definitely have a goal. I mean, it's good to have a solid goal of like, what do I want to achieve and what things should I do to start making steps towards that? And if you're like overweight or really out of shape, don't think you got to get on the treadmill and walk for an hour or 30 minutes. Just get on the treadmill and walk for 7 minutes. And then leave. And then tomorrow, try 8 minutes. You know, and then try not. And if you can do that every day, you're going to look back 6 months from now and go, "Holy crap! Look how far I came." So yeah, that's what I would say is do something that's enjoyable and be consistent with it.
Don't burn yourself out.
Don't burn yourself out. Yes.
And just go. And go when you don't feel like it. Like have the discipline to show up when you don't want to.
Perfect. So here's I relate it to this. I go to the gym every day and people ask me like, oh, how do you stay so motivated? And so, to go to the gym. And I think that's such a weird question because it's like, what I want to ask is how do you stay motivated to brush your teeth every night? How do you stay so motivated to shower? You don't, you just do it, right? You don't, it's just part of your routine. It's something that it's ingrained in you. You've done it for so long. It's just a non-negotiable. It would take a lot for me to like not brush my teeth at night or take a shower. So that's what you want. That's what I would hope that someone would try to make fitness part of their day, that it's just, it's something that you do. That's it's like you eat food because that's what you do. I work out because that's what I do. I brush my teeth. It's just a habit. So in the beginning, you might have to go and do it when you don't feel like doing it, but just show up and do it and don't overcommit yourself to doing something that's too hard. In the beginning, just show up, just drive to the gym, walk through the doors and just walk in. And I bet you it'll just go from there. Get on a machine, do a set. And if you want to leave, fine. At least you had the habit of showing up. But usually what happens is you do 5 minutes and it turns into 10. You start feeling good. You keep going.
I think having accountability partners is important too. Like go with friends or have somebody. That's why a personal trainer is great because a lot of people don't know what the heck they're doing in the gym either. They don't know what all these machines are doing. Like they don't know how to focus on certain muscle groups and like what a good training regimen is for them. So it's very important to like talk to somebody that knows what they're doing or go with somebody that knows what they're doing too.
Yeah. So you're right on. I mean, that's a huge segment of people who are working with trainers or people who don't know what they're doing. And they find, like we did with recovery, we finally realized, well, I don't know how to stay clean. So maybe I should seek someone who can help me with this. Same thing with fitness, but even those who know what they're doing still need accountability to do it because just because I know that one thing I'm bad about is stretching, right? It's something I know I need to be doing. I need to be working on my mobility, but I don't do it. And I keep saying I know how to do it and I know what to do and I make other people do it, but it's something that I slack on doing. So I would see benefit in hiring someone to make me do it. Even though I may know what to do, I don't do it. So having the accountability or the push to bring you to the next level is huge. I mean, think of any professional athlete, name whoever you want. I mean, we could go Michael Phelps, or I mean, maybe I'm going back with that one, right? But any Tiger Woods, Evander Holyfield, any of these big names in sports, they don't just work out on their own and then show up to training. They have a coach who makes them train harder than they would on their own. They have a team that holds them accountable to pushing themselves and not quitting when they feel like quitting. So that's huge, is getting that accountability in the beginning. I would definitely suggest hiring a coach or if you have someone who knows what they're doing that's going to be consistent, it's just sometimes both two blind people will join the gym together and try to lead each other around blind, and neither of them have even proven that they're committed.
Yeah.
So make sure that if you are going with a friend or someone that, they understand your needs and your goals, and there's someone who's willing to be consistent with you.
Yeah, and make it fun, like
Totally.
try to enjoy your time there. Don't kill yourself and like do stuff you hate doing. Like,
Totally. There's so many ways
that's why,
to,
it's sports are great. Like my mom does pickleball and she like gets her ass kicked, like drenched in sweat, like having a great workout while she's doing something that she loves to do.
Totally. And that's what I was saying earlier. Like if weight training isn't really something that you enjoy doing, that's fine. There's so many things out there that feel good, that are fun, that are motivating. I love pickleball, actually.
Yeah, it's very fun.
Yeah.
So what kind of, things would you tell a newcomer in recovery? Like what are some of the habits that what are some of your secrets for success in recovery? And what are some of the habits that you've developed that have allowed you to have some longevity and like good recovery, not just like time sober, but like living a life worth living?
This is a really good question. So, I think I've kind of answered this over the course of this conversation. So if I'm going to condense all that and sum it up, I would say find and accept some sort, or be open to a higher power if you're not, right? That's number one. Realize that if there's a God, that you're not it, right? And it doesn't matter what that God is yet. Just realize that there's something that's bigger than you.
Yeah.
All right. And just at least believe that might be true. The second thing I would say is be grateful. Write down. In the beginning, I would write down at least 5 things that you're grateful for. Because when you wake up in the morning and you start your day off with realizing the good things about your life, that sets a trajectory for your day that's focused on positive. If you focus on negative things and you're bitching and complaining in the morning, that's just going to snowball into more bitching and complaining and looking at the negativity in things. So write down the things you're grateful for. Even if you have a hard time finding them, find something, right? The fact that you have 2 legs to walk to the chow line in, right? Oh, I got to walk to chow. Okay, well, great. You have 2 legs. You get to walk there. You don't have to roll there. You have 2 lungs that are working, or maybe you don't. Maybe you only have 1 lung, but shit, you're still breathing, right? Be grateful for that. Be grateful for the fact that you have another day to make the choice to stay clean or not, and other people have lost that choice. So there's so many things to be grateful for. So find some things that you're going to be grateful for. Find a higher power, and just focus on today and doing the best you can today.
Yeah.
Because when you start future tripping about the next day and the day, and it's hard not to do.
Yeah.
But just today, what's my goal today? What are the things I want to do today? And whatever that is, I'm just going to do my best at that. Don't worry about tomorrow. So those would be the 3 things I say is higher power, gratitude, like I said earlier, and do the best you can today. Best foot forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Anything you'd add to that?
I would say trust the process, you know, like give this thing a shot, like really get out of your own way and ask somebody to help you, and like really just give it your best shot. Like give it 6 months to a year and really give it your best shot and see where it gets you, like work all 12 steps to the best of your ability, honest, open-minded, and willing. Cultivate that relationship with your higher power. Allow him to work in your life, and see where it gets you. You can always go back to the streets. Like they're not going anywhere, But when you will have a spiritual awakening as a result of working these steps, and you'll never want to go back.
Yeah.
Like once you get some of that peace and serenity, you never want to give it up. You just want to give it to other people.
Totally. So
you know what
well
I mean?
said.
And that's how we do it. We do it by helping other people get to the same place. So, just to add on to what you said, like the physical exercise, having a healthy like diet, making sure you're sleeping, pay attention to the things that you're reading and listening to.
Totally.
And, you know, try to cut out negative relationships,
Absolutely.
toxic people in your life. Like, that's part of the willingness, is like, you got to be willing to make some hard decisions.
Well, yeah, changing everything, right? And it's not all easy.
It's not easy, especially cutting people out of your life. Like, these toxic people, family members.
And I want to, you just actually made a good point about the diet and the paying attention to your health.
Yeah.
And I see this happen with a lot of people. And I think that traditionally the women tend to struggle with this more because they seem to be more like focused on their weight more than guys, but guys are too. We are too. But when they get clean and they start, they change one addiction for another, and now food becomes the addiction, and they ramp up all this weight. They get to the point where I know a lot of people who are less healthy now, clean, than they were when they were loaded. They were actually probably in better health than they are now. So we have to be careful not to change one addiction for another and let ourselves get so unhealthy. And then when you see yourself ballooning up in weight and you get uncomfortable, then you look at the solution, which is let's go back to the old life, right? So if you can have, it's just so important to not use the crutch of, oh, I need to lose weight. And I've seen so many people, and I say women because in my experience, it seems to be a lot more women who will gain weight in recovery and then go back out because they're not comfortable gaining that weight. So I do think it's, you got to give yourself some grace in the beginning and really just focus on staying clean. But there's got to be a point in which we start to say, okay, I'm going to take control over my health overall, not just quit using drugs, but what other ways can I nourish myself for longevity so I can continue to be around to help more people?
Yeah. And like continually progress, you know, like always try to better yourself and better your situation and whatever, you know, your ambitions are in life, you know, like having progress towards those things, you know, progress towards a worthy ambition, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, it's like the definition of success for me, you know, so whatever that is for you. And just make sure that you're, you know, always striving and trying to be better and trying to, you know, be of service and help other people. And for me, getting outside of myself has been, still to this day, is like the number one thing. Like, it's how I find purpose in my life. It's, you know, how I find meaning in my life, how I find meaning in my past.
Yeah.
And it gives me purpose, and it's a way for me to get outside of myself, you know, and it feels good to help other people. And there's nothing more powerful than helping another drug addict to find recovery. Like, you see that light come on in their eyes, they start to get stuff back. They're, you know, they get relationships, they feel good about themselves. And like, there's just nothing more powerful. That's God, you know, working in their lives. And it's the biggest blessing in recovery. And it's, you know, one of the bigger blessings in my life today.
Yeah. And I think it's great that in my job with personal training at the gym, I get the ability to work with so many addicts in recovery that through referrals come through and talk with me, and I'm able to help get them on a path of like feeling confident about themselves, and then having someone to relate to and realize, look, it's all right. Like, I totally understand where you're coming from. And then we can, you know, I can drop some little higher power bombs in there, you know, and sneak them in. You know, I shouldn't try not to overpower anyone with God at work, but, you know, sometimes it's good to ask some questions and get them thinking. So
yeah, and it's more about like being the example too.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Like, people, you want people to ask you like, what are you doing? You know, that's like gotten you to this point, and then you hit them with Jesus. You know?
Exactly.
Well, Brad, I'm so glad you came out today. I had a good time at the gym and dinner
great.
And everything, and definitely do it again in the future.
Appreciate it, man.
All right, brother.
Yeah.
Victorious we became, but never forgot where we came from. Life or death, not a game. We came to change the lane. Recovery addicts, that's the name. Give yourself a break, just one day at a time. You were born to shine, so live and let love be forever. My sister, my brother, don't give in. Please remember, the lie is dead. We do recover. Welcome home.